Hello everyone, I'm Courtney Lewis, Music Director of the Jacksonville Symphony. Like many of you, I've been spending the last couple of weeks at home to stay away from the coronavirus, but you could very well ask, what does a conductor do at home when all the concerts have been cancelled? Well, this week I've been studying Schubert's C major symphony, the Great Symphony, sometimes called number 7, sometimes called number 8, sometimes called number 9. This is a piece that we will hopefully still be performing at the end of this season. Most of what a conductor does actually takes place away from the podium, away from the concert hall, in whatever environment he or she uses to study and learn the music. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about just how I do that, what my process is for learning a piece of music. Now, as you know, conductors conduct from a book called a score that contains all the music of all the instruments in the orchestra. And a lot of preparation before the rehearsals is getting to a place where you can read that score in front of you and hear all the notes. Now, there are lots of different ways that you might arrive at that point. For example, if it's a well-known piece like this Symphony of Schubert, many of us simply know the piece because we've been to many concerts. We might have played it in a youth orchestra, conducted it lots of times before. But there will still always be parts of a piece that are unfamiliar and that we need to remind ourselves of. So there are two ways that I learn music. One is at the piano, and the other is at my desk. So here we are in the first place at the piano, and I've got here a piano version of the Schubert Symphony. And this morning I've been working on the second movement. So here is the piano version of the first minute of the second movement of Schubert's Great Symphony. This movement's in A minor, and it begins on that second line, if you can see, with an oboe melody, just where it says OB in the corner. So on the piano, the beginning of that second movement sounds like this. So the idea is that in that first stage of learning, you use whatever means possible, your memory from previous performances or time at the piano, to arrive at a point where you can hear all the notes away from an instrument in your head as you read the score. And then once you've reached that point, for me, it's time to step away from the piano, step away from recordings and other performances, and come up with your own interpretation of the piece at your desk. So up the stairs we go, away from the piano. This is what I do all day long, run up and down these stairs from the piano to my study. And here we are. So I thought I'd show you some of my scores. So these are bookshelves of full scores of everything. Starts up here with A, so there's Bach and Aras, and those are all the Beethoven symphonies, the purple ones. You tend to build up an awful lot of these over time. And one of my favorite sets of scores is over here. When I got the job of music director in Jacksonville, I treated myself to this, which is the complete Mozart edition. So that's just about every note that Mozart ever wrote. And then over here we've got most of what Wagner wrote. Stravinsky's up there, and then something for next season, all the symphonies of Haydn. Next year we're making a journey through lots of the symphonies, so I'm studying those like crazy at the moment. So now we're ready to work on the full score of the piece. Here's the full score of the same music that we were listening to on the piano. So in front of you here, on one page, all of this happens at the same time. So this is the whole orchestra. Look here, we've got flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, all in Italian, flauti, oboe, clarinetto, fagotto, horns, trumpets, trombones, timps, first violins, second violins, violas, cellos and basses. So that's what you heard me play. Dum 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 da yum ba dum ba da dum da dum da da yum da dum dum dum. And then up here, there's the oboe. It starts over here actually. Da yum ba bum ba ba dum bim bum ba. And that's that whole passage that I played for you a second ago on the piano. All of this too. And we stopped when we got there. So you can imagine that is 1 minute of music of one piece. Look at the amount of detail that there is on this page. We've got piano, we've got accents, we've got different rhythms, we have diminuendi, we have instruments coming in at a different time, we've got changes of key. There's an enormous amount of detail, and what you do at the desk is basically learn as much of that, internalize as much of it as possible, because in performance there's really no time to look at the score, and often for this kind of repertoire I don't use one anyway, so that literally won't be there. So we use this time at the desk to really get to know all the detail of the music slowly. Sometimes music is a lot more complicated than Schubert though. Pieces from the 20th century can often have so much detail, so many changes of time signature, that you've got to mark up the score an awful lot more. I've got here the score from the Stravinsky Symphony in C, which is a piece that we were supposed to be playing at Shift last week, and I hope that we'll be playing that again in the future. Unlike the Schubert, this is a piece that changes time signature constantly, and in performance the score has a different kind of function. I have to read the score a little bit more in a performance than I would in the Schubert. The Schubert barely glance at the score, if at all, but in the Stravinsky, because it's so complicated, I have to actually read it, and that means that I mark it up in a totally different way. So you might have noticed that the Schubert only had pencil markings, but for the Stravinsky, because I'm going to be reading it in the concert, I mark everything up a lot more heavily and in colour. So here's a page from the third movement of the Stravinsky Symphony in C. Now, just like in the Schubert, all the instruments are laid out the same way. Piccolo, flute, oboe, clarinets, bassoons, horns, trumpets, timpani, first violins, second violins, violas, cellos and basses. But look how much more complicated it is. 4/8, that's the time signature, that means I beat 4 in a bar. Changes to 3/8 over here, changes to 4/8, I've got a little comment there, sniff, to remind myself to breathe. 2/8, 3/8, so all the time signatures are in blue. And then I mark in the instruments in red, so V, C, C, B, that's cellos and basses, start with them. Then the first violins over here, first and seconds and violas, horns, bassoons, oboes. Dynamics I put in red, so there are crescendos going to forte, more hairpins over there, and then accents in blue. And also there are things just to help, like this is a very difficult bar rhythmically, so I've written in 1, 2, 3, 4, just to remind myself where everything lines up on the page. So it just continues like that, page after page of all these markings. It's a very complicated piece, look at the rhythms there. This is reminding me what to beat in a 5/16 bar. Beat a dotted eighth note, beat a straight eighth. So you can imagine that there's an awful lot of time spent preparing the score. But the good thing is that when you spend this much time at your desk with a piece of music, you absorb an enormous amount of information, and that helps you to come up with your interpretation of the piece. And that's very important, because when you come to the rehearsal, you've got to have a point of view, you've got to have something to offer the musicians. So thanks for joining me at home for this introduction to how I learn music at the piano and then at my desk. Stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye-bye.